Brilliant. Good. Let's talk about the co-main event. Gilbert Burns.
Not brilliant.
Not brilliant, this co-main event.
No.
Gilbert Burns defeats Jorge Masvidal by unanimous decision. And then Masvidal retires. 20-year career for Masvidal ends in Miami, Florida, his hometown. But let's talk about the winner first. Gilbert Burns didn't do enough for a title shot, did he?
You had it here first on Holland. I'm talking, brother. You need a big finish. You want to displace Colby. You want to announce yourself. You didn't do that for me.
He almost did it. He almost did it. That third round when Masvidal was rocked and like backing up to the cage, I was just like, Gilbert, mate, just throw anything and you'll probably finish him. Like if he knocks Masvidal out, like that would have been, I think, probably close to knocking Colby out of that title shot. Probably not doing it ultimately. As you heard from that crowd reaction, it does seem like Colby's going to be getting the next fight. That crowd reaction for when Mr. Donald Trump arrived in the arena shows where that fan base is really at the moment, particularly in Florida. I thought it was an impressive performance from Gilbert. It showed that he is of a very high standard at welterweight, but I'm kind of getting the inclination that he hasn't got that much left. I don't think he's got much left in his career, has Gilbert.
No, he's got some mileage on him. And he was fighting a man with even more mileage. And I thought we could really see that here. Jorge Masvidal was moving a little bit like, Nick Diaz in his fight with Robbie Lawler. He was lacking that athleticism, Joe. He didn't have much pop. The kicks, those patented kicks to the stomach, we were talking about them on the pod, Joe. They weren't hurting anybody. They were laboured. They were slow. There's a bit of Tony Ferguson in there.
Oh, don't.
Joe, I saw it. That's what I saw when I saw Jorge Masvidal. I didn't see the Jorge Masvidal that I saw fight Nate Diaz a few years ago. I didn't see the Jorge Masvidal from the first Usman fight. His physique is changing.
Even the second Usman fight. Like he was so flat-footed.
What we're looking at, Joe, is a 38-year-old man at welterweight.
Nearly 39.
Yeah.
That's rough, man. That's rough.
Yeah, and given all that, he gave a pretty good account of himself, and that really means you have to hold the mirror up to Gilbert Burns, who, as you say, likewise, suddenly didn't look like the all-coming kind of powerful
conqueror.
And he's always had that edge to him because he's a powerful guy. He originally, of course, came from lightweight, but he really bulked up, and that was kind of Gilbert Burns Mark II. I think we might be starting to see Gilbert Burns Mark III.
It's the shoulders that always got me about Burns. Like he's got such like a powerful hunched style. Like when he throws like his big punches, like his big hooks, and his big straights. Like it comes from like this like springy like stance as well. And it's just there was just something that was slightly missing. He was a bit tentative. I think he was just like, I'm just going to get the win at this stage. I'm not going to be able to finish him.
I mean, I think one element to that was he had bought into a bit of the mythology around Masvidal, and he must have studied the Usman fight in the knowledge of what Usman, of course, did to him, how their fight went, and thought, okay, this man, he can be dangerous. And I think he was a little bit tentative. He lacked a bit of killer instinct, but let's look a little bit more about the kind of technical details here. First of all, how did you score the fight?
30-27.
30-27. Was there any question marks about the first round? Because some people raised some
nice right leg kicks. Masvidal did that sort of switch blitz that he lands. That was the one that landed on Till, and I've got to say that sort of blitz move he does, where he like almost like runs through and changes stance as he runs through, just didn't have that spring there anymore. And actually Burns showed that the easiest way to defeat that is by taking a couple steps back. And like Masvidal was like leaning on his punches. He was really like stretching and leaning forward on them. And he just didn't have the thing is, if you're leaning forward, if you've got the arm reach for it, that's fine. But if you're like having to lean forward from the waist as well, you're just not going to get the same power on it at that stage. So yeah, I thought Masvidal was kind of that classic move of his now was sort of exposed. That's weird sort of switch knee, that jump knee he was throwing as well. That was just...
It's miles away.
It was desperate, wasn't it? It was desperate. And then he landed...
That was one of the things I was looking at, though, when I'm talking about the athleticism, Joe. Like, it wasn't like the one he landed on Ben Askren. Now, of course, we know Ben Askren ducked into it. We know that. But still, the explosiveness, it just wasn't there. It was an old man switch knee.
Do you think Masvidal could do that run-up now? Do you think he'd even do... Because the whole part that knockout was the run-up. Like, he sprinted at him and threw that mad knee. He couldn't do that now, could he? He couldn't even do that jog across to get to that knee. Like, it's just... Yeah, I think it's too much. And I think even he said it was just like, my body's not been able to do what I want. And it's like, yeah, mate, 20 years of doing this, it's going to get like that, you know. It's just what's going to happen. So it's an odd career to really think about, because it's like, I think in a weird way, he's more defined by his losses, isn't he? Like the amount of split decision losses he had, you know, the people that he lost to in the split decisions, and then compared to the people he beat, like, what's his best win? Is the Nate Diaz win? The Donald Cerrone win?
I mean, that's when he looked the most well-rounded against Nate Diaz.
Mm.
You know, that's when you got to see his full arsenal on the feet.
And he's vicious. He's very vicious in that fight.
And then he did have a pop and power that comes with being a more youthful fighter. But I think ultimately the story of Jorge Masvidal, it's much told, but it ultimately holds true. This is a man who came from bare-knuckle boxing in backyards in Florida with Kimbo Slice on kind of X-rated tapes that were talked about in playgrounds. He came from there, Joe, and his career kind of followed the whole evolution of MMA and UFC to culminate in what was almost a main event, effectively a main event in a pay-per-view in Miami, his home city, where he's got 8-ounce gloves. He's fighting in a cage with referees, a full crowd, a legitimate sport. The backstreet brawler, legitimized, and becomes a favoured son of the city. That's what I found really remarkable watching this and thinking about that. Like, his journey echoes the evolution of the sport. Just look how far we've come. He's a man who still stands up there, retires ranked 11 in a sport that's overtaken him. So ultimately, I think you've got to tip your hat to Jorge Masvidal.
Absolutely.
Thank you for your contribution to the sport.
You know what? That's a really lovely way of signing off on Masvidal's career. And he did the same thing as well with his promo, before then declaring Donald Trump the greatest president of all time, and then saying Ron DeSantis is the best governor of all time. Starting a "Let's Go Brandon" chant. I mean, Jesus, even when he was doing his promo, I'm like, man, this guy, what a dog. Like, I mean, he lives up to the nickname of Game Bread, and it's just like, and Donald, all I wanted was someone to come out with the cane, get it around his neck, and just yank him off center stage. Just like, listen, Jorge, mate, you just absolutely nailed that promo. It was beautiful. And then you've ruined it.
But he certainly played to the crowd, as you said. That's what they wanted to hear. I'll make no comment on that. But I certainly agree. Could have done us all a favour if somebody hooked him off stage.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, thank you, Jorge. And ultimately, you know, I think we can expect him to sit alongside the likes of Donald Cerrone as one of these Hall of Famers who, you know, we kind of know he was never quite there, but his contribution was at that level ultimately, if you take it as a full package.
Absolutely. Can we talk about Joe Rogan in this fight? Because that was one of the worst commentary performances I've ever heard in my entire life. Like that third round where Masvidal's getting mushed up against the cage and battered, and he's just like, Jorge's doing really well in this third round. And then when Burns goes for the takedown, did you hear Rogan go, oh no, like that? Did you hear that?
Yeah, I caught it. And I think you can link that with the second part of his post-fight speech, and where Rogan's allegiances truly lie.
Yeah.
You know, he knows where his bread is buttered.
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing with most of these guys. Is like, I don't want to get into too much of a rant about this sort of realm that the Joe Rogans occupy, but let's be real, man. Like, they're grifters. They're complete and utter grifters. and they're just telling you what you want to hear, as much as the mainstream media that they complain about. But that's an argument for another day, brother. You know, we don't need to get into our media studies class just yet. But
no,
sorry.
quite. But the truth, it can be heard on Holland I'm Talking Brother. And what's the truth for Gilbert Burns? Where is he now? What do you do with him?
I hate to say it, man, because I do love him, but brother, I'm gonna have to sacrifice you to Shavkat. Like, you need to. Yeah, you ain't getting a title shot. Like, I don't know, man. Like, he beat Jorge, yeah, and that was all well and good. Apparently, he's going to weigh in as the backup to Colby versus Edwards. Dana confirmed that in the post-fight press conference.
Oh my God, that guy, Joe. He spoke on the mic and he said that like he was ordaining Burns.
Yeah, exactly.
Like a pat on the back.
Well done. Well done. You get to cut weight and get not fight.
Chutzpah.
Yeah.
On Dana White.
I know. By the way, can I also make this declaration? You can take this to the bank along with Arnold Allen beating Volkanovski. But I think Leon Edwards smokes Gilbert Burns and Colby Covington. Like, I don't think it's going to be competitive, either of those fights. You heard it here first.
Yeah. I mean, long live the king.